I stood still in the kitchen, dish towel still in hand, as Caleb walked out of the bedroom with a black suitcase stuffed full of clothes. He didn't look at me, his eyes were fixed on the hardwood floor, as if the ground itself could explain the decision he was about to make. "Where are you going?" I asked, my voice raspier and lower than usual. Caleb paused in the hallway, gripping the handle of his bag so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "I can't stay anymore." I had sensed this coming for weeks. The way he avoided eye contact, the late nights, the unfamiliar perfume lingering on his collar. But knowing is one thing. Watching him actually leave was something else entirely. A cold blade sliced straight through my chest. "For who?" I asked, the question falling from my lips like a verdict. Caleb closed his eyes. He was never good at lying. "It's Lana." I let out a dry, broken laugh like it had burst out of my body before I could stop it. Lana, the intern who joined his company 3 months ago. Barely 25, hair as golden as sunlight, always trailing behind him like a shadow. I had seen the way she looked at him. Like a prize that hadn't been claimed. And him, the man who had been my husband for 12 years, chose to walk away for that look. "Figured," I said, steadying my voice. "But I still hoped you wouldn't stoop that low." He turned away, as if he couldn't stand my gaze. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. "What about this house, Caleb? What about the loan we co-signed? Are you just going to leave it like you're leaving this family?" "I'll send money," he replied, his voice tired, as if he were the one who'd been betrayed. "I'll contribute every month." I stepped out of the kitchen and stood in front of him. "You think a few $100s is enough to make up for all those nights I pulled 12-hour ER shifts, came home, cleaned, cooked, and put our son to bed alone?" Caleb was silent. No answer. Just cowardice. "Then go," I whispered, my throat tightening. "Take all your empty promises and walk out of our lives." He didn't say another word, just turned, opened the door, stepped out and closed it, so softly it was terrifying, as if none of it had ever happened. I stood frozen. The house was painfully silent. Every wall, every cupboard corner, every tick of the clock echoed with crushed memories. I had once believed in them. In the night we signed the papers for this house. In the moment our son first called him Dad. In those weary, wordless hugs after long shifts. All of it, now shattered in a single afternoon. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and walked toward the living room. Liam, my 8-year-old son, was sitting on the rug playing with building blocks. He looked up as he saw me, his innocent eyes instantly sensing something was wrong. "Mom, are you crying?" I sat down next to him and pulled him into a tight hug. That small body was all I had left. I couldn't let him be hurt anymore. "Your dad, he's not going to be here anymore, Liam," I whispered. "But I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere." Liam said nothing, he just held on to me tighter. And in that moment I knew I didn't have time to fall apart. 2 weeks after Caleb left, I took my first night shift at St. Paul's Hospital on the east side of the city. I had always declined night shifts before, so I could be home with Liam in the evenings, but now every soft option had disappeared with the back of that man walking out. Liam was still asleep when I slipped out of the house at 8 p.m. He hadn't asked any more questions since the night I told him about Caleb, but I knew he was swallowing the sadness whole. Kids do that. They think they need to be strong. For us, the shift lasted 12 hours. Patients came and went nonstop, call bells ringing, footsteps echoing down the halls, heart monitors beeping without end. I worked like if I stopped for even 1 second I would fall apart. Every injection, every dressing change was how I kept myself intact. The next morning I drove home through a thin mist, my body feeling like it was unraveling. But what brought me to my knees wasn't exhaustion. It was the sight in front of me. Liam sitting alone on the couch, hugging his old stuffed bear, eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. "You stayed up all night?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. He just nodded, not looking at me. "I can't sleep when you're not here." I sat beside him and wrapped him in my arms. I didn't even have the strength to cry anymore, only a long exhale that ached all the way through my chest. The days that followed were an endless loop that drained every cell in me. 2 hours of sleep, wake up to take care of Liam, throw together a rushed lunch, grab another nap, then head back out. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman with deep under-eye circles, messy hair, and cracked lips. But I had no other choice. If I didn't work, we wouldn't have money for bills, let alone the looming mortgage. Liam wasn't the same cheerful boy he used to be. He spoke less, stayed quiet, and never mentioned his dad. After school, he'd go straight to his room, shut the door, and bury himself in books. I'd knock, ask what he wanted for dinner, and he'd always reply, "Anything's fine." I started feeling like I was losing him, and worse, I didn't know how to bring him back. One evening, as I was getting ready for work, there was a knock at the door. It was Mrs. June, our neighbor next door. I had never spoken much to her beyond polite greetings, but that day she stood at my doorstep with a gentle look in her eyes and a bag of homemade cookies. "I noticed you haven't been out much," she said, her voice deep and warm. "I figured things aren't easy right now," I acknowledged with a glance. Then the truth slipped out of me. My husband left, and I'm scared I might leave myself next. Mrs. June didn't say anything. She simply set the bag on the table, made tea, and moved around my kitchen like she'd done it 100 times. "I've been where you are," she said quietly after a while. "My husband died when my boy was 6. Every night I left for work, I'd worry whether he was still sleeping peacefully or crying alone." I looked at her, stunned. That woman, the one who always wore neat cardigans and tended to her front garden, had once been lonely and exhausted like me. "I can't take your shifts for you," she said, gently holding my hand, "but I can watch Liam every night while you work. He needs someone at home, and you need to sleep through the night at least once." I burst into tears, the kind I hadn't shed since Caleb walked away, not out of weakness, but because someone finally saw me. From that day on, every time I left for work, Mrs. June came by to stay with Liam. She read him bedtime stories, made chicken soup, and always left a note on the fridge. "You slept well, Mom did great." I no longer felt completely alone. But I knew the storm wasn't over yet. That Saturday morning, I came home after an unusually long shift. My back ached, my head buzzed from lack of sleep. I planned to quietly make coffee in the kitchen until I saw Liam sitting at the dining table, his laptop open in front of him. His face lit up in a way that made me pause. "Up early, huh?" I asked, trying to muster a smile. Liam looked at me, his eyes glinting with a trace of pride. "Mom, I did something to help you." I stopped, uneasy. "Help me?" He leaned forward slightly. "I sent some stuff, files from Dad's old laptop." I rushed to his side, my heart pounding. "What did you send? What did you find on his computer?" "You let me borrow his old laptop last time," Liam said, still calmly seated. "I found a folder that wasn't password protected. It had documents, spreadsheets, invoices, some contracts." I sat down, my face turning cold. "Who did you send them to?" Liam swallowed hard. "His boss, and some people whose email addresses had the word legal in them." My whole body stiffened. "Liam, why would you do that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I kept seeing you cry. You lost weight, looked tired, stopped eating. And Dad? He was out there living it up with that woman. I just wanted him to realize how badly he wrecked our family. I thought if he lost his job, he'd understand and come back." I closed my eyes. My chest hurt, like someone had packed it full of stones. "Sweetheart, what you did might have made things much worse," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm, though I was panicking inside. "Your dad could lose everything, and you could be in trouble too." Liam lowered his head. "I just wanted you to be okay. I hate hearing you cry in the bathroom." I gently squeezed his shoulder. "I know. But there are other ways to protect each other, not through destruction." I stood up, my thoughts spinning. What had Caleb done with those files? If anything shady was exposed and now leaked, this could ruin him. And truthfully, I didn't know if I wanted to see him completely destroyed, even after all he'd done. "Where did you send them from?" I asked. "My email, Gmail. I used my real name. I didn't think it was dangerous." I swallowed hard. What now? Call Caleb? Warn him? Get a lawyer? But I did nothing. I just looked at Liam, my 8-year-old child, and felt my heart both break and clench. He didn't fully understand the consequences, but he acted out of love. That hurt more than anything. That afternoon, I made a cup of hot cocoa and brought it to Liam's room. He was sitting there reading comics, his face somber. I sat on the edge of his bed. You know, sometimes adults make mistakes too. Your dad made one, but that doesn't mean we need to punish him. But he left, Liam said, eyes red. He didn't need you. He didn't need me. I stroked his hair, my stomach tightening. Maybe that's true. But we can't let someone else's choices turn us into people we're not, do you understand? He didn't answer, just gave a small, solemn nod. That night, just as I was about to lie down, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. On the other end was a male voice, hoarse and shaky. Abigail, it's me. It's Caleb. I gripped the phone, my heart stinging. I know, he whispered. They fired me. They said, someone leaked internal data. There's an investigation. Everything's falling apart. I said nothing. I don't know what to do anymore, Caleb continued, his voice cracking. I lost my job and she left. Lana disappeared the moment I told her I no longer had a paycheck. I sighed, not out of pity, but exhaustion from this endless, miserable loop. Why are you calling me, Caleb? I asked. Not cold, but definitely not warm. I don't know, he said. I have no one left. I looked out the window. The sun was setting behind a row of houses. Liam was in his room, the soft clatter of Legos drifting into the hallway. I didn't answer. All I could think was this. I can't let an adult's bitterness shape my child's childhood. 2 days later, I was standing in line at the pharmacy when I received an email from the legal department of Caleb's company, an official confirmation that he had been terminated for ethical violations and unauthorized interference with internal data. The language was cold, sharp as a blade. I thought I was mentally prepared, but when I read the line about referring the case to an external audit, my hands started to shake. I rushed home and called Liam to the couch. He knew something was wrong. That little face tried so hard to stay calm, like a grown-up. Liam, you have to tell me everything you sent, every file, every email, every recipient. He bit his lip and pulled out a small notebook I didn't even know he had hidden under his pillow. I wrote it all down. I didn't want to forget. I flipped through the pages. There were email addresses, timestamps, subject lines. Part of me was choked up by how meticulous my son was. Another part felt a chill down my spine. What Liam had sent, even without fully understanding, could destroy Caleb's career and maybe even his freedom. That night, Caleb called again. His voice was hoarse, almost stripped of its usual confidence. Abigail, please, help me. I sat in my car parked behind the hospital, both hands gripping the steering wheel. Help you with what, Caleb? I asked. Help erase the consequences of your betrayal? Or help you dodge the legal system? He was silent for a moment, then spoke, his voice fracturing. I don't know who listens to me anymore. Lana's gone. My friends are avoiding me. My family says I've brought them shame. I just thought of you and Liam. I laughed out loud. Now you remember Liam? Where were you when he watched his mother fall apart every day? When he clutched his teddy bear at night because his father wasn't there to read him a story? What hotel were you in with your precious little intern? I know I messed up, Caleb whispered. I just want a chance to fix it. I took a deep breath. No, you don't need a second chance from me. What you need is to learn how to live with what you've done. But if this goes to court, I cut him off, my voice calm but sharp. You can hire a lawyer, blame weak data security if you want, but don't expect me to defend you. I have to protect my child. I hung up, my heart pounding. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel victorious. Just drained. Right now, I needed to go home, sit next to Liam, and say something I should have said a long time ago. Liam, I called him to the back porch after dinner. The sunset cast a soft orange glow over the grass, like velvet. He sat beside me, eyes sad but composed. Your dad lost his job, I began slowly, and there may be more consequences ahead. He exhaled through his nose. I know. He texted me yesterday. I was startled. What did he say? That I ruined his career, that if I really loved him I wouldn't have done it. I took his hand, felt the chill seep into my skin. You didn't ruin anything. You're just a child trying to protect your mom in the only way you knew how. But you have to understand, every action has consequences. And sometimes those consequences affect more than just the one who did wrong. Liam's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want him to go to jail, I just wanted him to see how much he hurt you. I squeezed his small hand tight. I know, but the most important thing now is that you don't carry that weight. It's not your fault when adults make bad decisions. We sat in silence for a long time, listening to the crickets hum as night slowly swallowed the sky. I didn't know what would happen to Caleb, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let my son grow up burdened by guilt that wasn't his to bear. I started picking up extra consultation work after my regular shifts, mostly thanks to referrals from a retired physician named Dr. Chandler, who had once taught me in a community nurse training program years ago. He still kept in touch with a few elderly patients around Tacoma, people who couldn't travel far and often needed in-home care. Each night, I carried my old gray canvas bag. Inside were a stethoscope, thermometer, gauze, syringes, and a few basic medications. I walked through older neighborhoods on the west side of the city where there were no private clinics, and the nearest hospital was a 20-minute drive away. At first, I only did it to earn a little extra cash for fresh groceries and to cover winter heating bills. But over time, those door knocks became what kept me standing. Every elderly woman who smiled when she opened her door, every soft, "Thank you, sweetheart. I don't know what I'd do without you," breathed life into my tired lungs. Then, one afternoon, Mrs. June stopped by with a cup of peppermint tea and a printed flyer. "Abigail, I just heard that an old laundromat on Maple Street is up for lease. It's not big, but it has wide windows and the plumbing's in good shape. If you're serious about opening your own clinic, this could be your start." I held the flyer and stared at the scribbled rent and utility estimates. My heart slowed. Even if it wasn't much with our finances, it still felt like a major leap. That evening I told Liam. He placed his hand on the table, serious like an adult. "If you believe in it, then you should do it. I'll help clean, I already know how to scrape old paint." I laughed, not because he was joking, but because there was a spark in his eyes I hadn't seen in a while. The next day I went to see the space. The windows were dusty, the tile floor cracked in places, but morning sunlight poured through the glass and bathed the white walls in a peaceful glow. I signed the lease. In the following weeks, Liam and I spent every spare moment cleaning, scraping paint, repainting the walls, installing tool hooks. I watched tutorials online to install a new sink and swapped out old fluorescent bulbs for LED ones. My former coworker Trish donated a white-painted medicine cabinet, and Dr. Chandler brought in a sturdy old exam table. That 900-square-foot room became my second home. I didn't have a big sign, a receptionist, or an automated booking system, but I had skilled hands, listening ears, and a heart that had once been shattered. Enough to recognize pain without judgment. My first patient was a little boy with an ear infection. His mother, a single mom who had just lost her job and didn't qualify for insurance, brought him in. I treated him for free and showed her how to warm garlic in oil to soothe his ear while she waited to afford medicine. Word spread faster than I expected. A week later, an elderly woman from the corner house stopped by for aching joints. Then a construction worker with a minor burn came in for bandages and ointment. I started recording medical notes in a notebook and taped a small sign at the entrance. "Community care, pay what you can." I wasn't richer, but I felt more fulfilled. One day while I was reorganizing the medicine shelf, Liam walked in holding an old cardboard box. "I found this in the garage. Maybe we can turn it into a little first aid kit for the front desk." I hugged him. No words needed, we were rebuilding a life together, from humble pieces but with solid hands. That evening, I sat on the clinic steps, watching the streetlight reflect off the glass. Behind me were the medicine cabinet, the exam table, and the towel Liam had hung in the corner. One thing was certain. I no longer lived in anyone's shadow. I was lighting a path for myself and for others. That June, after nearly a year of living on careful savings, I managed to send Liam to a 10-day summer camp at Arrowhead Lake. Surrounded by mountains, forests, and fresh air, I knew he desperately needed. I understood he still carried wounds deep inside, and sometimes, a child needs distance from memory to learn how to breathe freely again. On the morning I dropped him off, I stood by the roadside waving. The sunlight glinted through the bus windows and lit up his eyes as he turned to look back at me. He said nothing, but in his gaze, I saw a quiet peace he hadn't felt in a long time. I returned to the clinic. It looked the same, simple, complete, quiet, and warm. That day, I replaced the flowers in the glass vase on the desk and organized my patient files. No Lego sounds, no little voice reading aloud from the corner. An emptiness I still felt, but no longer feared. Finances had begun to stabilize. I didn't flinch every time a utility bill arrived. Old patients referred their neighbors, and from there word spread to families with elderly members needing long-term care. A nearby bakery owner would send over gift vouchers whenever I helped her mother recover after a stroke. Life wasn't luxurious, but it had meaning. One Sunday afternoon, I was restocking the medicine drawer when there was a knock at the door. I opened it. Dr. Chandler stood there, holding a worn wooden box. "Got room for this?" he asked, eyes twinkling with his familiar warmth. I opened the lid. Inside was an old brass stethoscope, next to a black and white photo of him standing in front of his clinic 30 years ago. "This was the first stethoscope I ever used," he said, his voice soft. "I think it belongs with someone who understands healing is more than just medicine." I clutched the box, unable to speak. In that moment, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every silent battle became worth it. That night, I got a call from the summer camp. It wasn't bad news. Just Liam's counselor wanting to share that he had helped his cabin mate after a hiking injury, and even showed others how to dress the wound. "He's very mature," the teacher said, "seems to understand how and when to care, better than most kids." I went still, something tangled inside me quietly unraveling. When Liam came home, I was waiting at the gate. He ran straight into my arms, his embrace so tight I couldn't stop the tears. That moment, I realized we'd made it through the storm and hadn't lost each other. "You know what, Mom?" Liam said during dinner that night. "Everyone at camp thought you were a doctor. I told them you didn't have a big clinic, but you're better than most. Because you actually listen to people." I laughed, stirring my tea. "I'm just a nurse, sweetheart." "But to me," Liam said firmly, "you're a healer." There was no space left in me for regret, only gratitude. Grateful for Mrs. June, who stayed with my son through nights without power. Grateful for Dr. Chandler, who believed in a former student who had stumbled. And grateful for myself. For the woman who once thought she couldn't go on, but still moved forward, step by quiet step, with no fanfare. Only resolve. By the end of that summer, I hung a small sign on the front window. "Elling Room, Abigail's Clinic." I didn't need anything more. One crisp autumn afternoon, after work, I took Liam for a walk around Lakeview Park, a place we often visited on holidays or quiet days. The leaves had turned golden and blanketed the stone path. The air carried a soft chill, just enough for the two of us to huddle closer in the long wool scarf I had just knitted. We walked side by side, sharing stories from our day. Liam told me about a classmate who had learned a coin trick. I smiled, leaned in to listen, and then stopped in my tracks. On a distant bench beneath bare branches sat a man alone. His body hunched forward, hands loosely draped over his knees, his eyes blank as they stared out at the still surface of the lake. The wind swept through his thinning hair, revealing graying patches and a sunken, unmistakable face. Caleb. I recognized him instantly, not by his appearance, but by the collapse etched into every sluggish movement. The eyes that once brimmed with smugness were now empty. His clothes were wrinkled, shoes worn thin. The man who had once walked away from me, and our son with the confidence of starting a new life, now sat there like a shadow fallen out of the world. Liam saw him too. He paused, a flicker of emotion in his gaze. Caleb looked up at the sound of footsteps, and our eyes met. No defiance, not even an apology, just a faint, blurry look, as if he wasn't sure he deserved to be recognized. I held Liam's hand. His hand was bigger and warmer now, but the feeling still grounded me in a strangely peaceful way. Caleb didn't get up. He didn't say my name. He just watched, like someone behind glass looking in on the life he'd lost by his own doing. I gave a small nod. Not a greeting, not a judgment. Just a quiet gesture for a stranger who had once passed through my life and left behind an aftershock. Then I turned to Liam. "Want to stop by the ice cream shop on the corner?" He gave a small shrug and we kept walking. I didn't look back. I didn't need any more explanations. Because I had come far enough to understand that forgiveness doesn't mean acceptance. Forgiveness means no longer giving someone the power to drag you back to where you once broke. Caleb was part of my story, but he left and I moved forward. My little healing room still glows every evening. People still knock, for scrapes or sometimes just a bit of advice when they're tired. I'm not a doctor, not a therapist, but I'm someone who listens, with everything I've lived and overcome. That night, as Liam and I sat on the clinic steps eating ice cream, he looked up and asked, "Are you still mad at Dad?" I paused for a moment and said, "No, I'm not mad. I haven't forgotten either. But I don't want to hold on to anything that hurts me anymore." He lowered his gaze slightly, as if understanding what his 8-year-old self couldn't quite put into words. He leaned his head on my shoulder. Nothing else needed to be said. The breeze carried the scent of cinnamon from the coffee shop down the street. The yellow streetlights cast soft glows on the pavement. I watched the people passing by and felt a strange, light ease inside me. I was no longer the woman left behind. I was the one who chose to move forward. My story didn't begin in strength, it began in pieces. But betrayal and pain taught me how to rise, not for anyone else, but for myself and my son. I wasn't seeking revenge, and I wasn't living for anyone's regret. I was living to heal others and myself. In real life, the most valuable thing isn't a perfect family. It's the courage to walk away from what breaks you and begin again with what's left. What do you think about Abigail's journey and her choice when facing the past? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about life and family.